happy birthday.
Thank
Obviously,
you very
we all
much.
wish you a birthday as well. But also, I wanted to ask you, because since the last time I saw you, you've been through the mill a bit, haven't you? Tell us about that.
Well, I had an unexpected, unplanned operation. So I have a lot of problems with my esophagus. So, and actually, it's funny, when I put it on social media, so many people live with strictures in their esophagus for lots of different reasons.
So explain what a stricture is for...
So a stricture is a narrowing of the esophagus, and mine is because I've got three points of scar tissue that can narrow down to a pinhole, which means, you know, you can't swallow food, you can't swallow saliva. And I choked, I must add, on my husband's cooking, not on my own. And I choked on Sunday. And normally that does happen to me quite a lot. And eventually the food will either come out through your mouth or it will pass and drop down into your stomach. But for me, it just wasn't passing. And my husband picked me up and held me upside down and was, like, hitting me and trying to get it out, trying all sorts of things. And in the end, I ended up going through A&E into hospital and had to have an endoscope and a dilatation. So I'm on soft food at the moment. I had my birthday cake, that was fine, that was chocolate. But it is something I have lived with for many years, and I've had stenting and lots of dilatations. But it's funny because it's so great. The operation was a week ago. I'm here back at work, joined by Tito. And, you know, it always makes me practice gratitude for actually I'm discharged and back to my normality and independence. And a lot of people, not just burn survivors, but people with esophageal problems, that isn't the case. And it's a lifestyle, managing soft food diets and avoiding certain things. So.
You are amazing, though. We were saying, weren't we, in the meeting, how positive you are.
Oh, I feel grateful. I
All
really
your
do,
language
you know.
is always peppered with, and I'm so lucky, and I'm so lucky, and I'm so lucky. I really noticed that about you.
I meet people who don't have the same outcome as me, people that have had similar injuries through my foundation, that, you know, don't get discharged after a week and have to have more and more invasive surgery. So, yeah, I do feel very privileged and fortunate.
I think as well, we talk about these are the problems that you have to live with now forevermore, really, Katie, all off the back of what happened to you.
Yeah.
And it does sort of reflect then back on the sentencings of the people that do these attacks, because you have to live with this now every single day. There's a new issue that you have to try and adapt your life around.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to get reflected in the sentences a lot of the time of the perpetrators in the first place. How do you feel about that? And I know your charity really tried to champion this cause and to make people, firstly, really aware of the horrific consequences of these kind of attacks and how it will affect you on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and it's like you said, you know, it's not just something that's just about beauty or the psychological effects. There's the functional, you know, that's what we're talking about, my esophagus. Your life will never be the same again in many different aspects. So I do think the sentencing and the charges brought before the perpetrators need to reflect the severity of what the victim has to live with. I mean, I think for me, it probably needs to be reclassified. It's becoming part of our modern culture. You know, and I say that, it's very depressing to have to say that, but it's a slur that's thrown around on social media as a threat, throwing acid in somebody's face. It's becoming the weapon of choice for a lot of people because it carries a lesser charge. So I do think the law needs to be updated with a reclassification so that the sentencing can be increased.
But it's weird, isn't it? Because your attack was 13 years ago, and you think by now they would have got a little bit more up to speed with the legislation that's needed. So, I mean, I'm sure you read about it as well, but there was the case last week that came to court of a medical student that threw acid into the face of his ex-girlfriend. She's been left blind in one eye, her other eye is damaged. She's already had 5 major operations. You know, it is a life sentence of its own in many ways, and yet he got 15 years, and then when I was reading into it, it's like the last 4 years will be on licence out and about if he behaves himself. Some reports said he will serve 11 years in prison. Other reports said he'll only serve 2/3 of that, which is, what, 8 years. It just seems very messy. You know, you kind of think why can't we just say, this is the sentence, this is the crime, this is the sentence, and you serve that sentence?
Because as a victim, when you go to court, you want that consistency. You don't want to have to worry about the safety of other people, of yourself. You know, the outcome should be set in stone. There should be a minimum term for this kind of crime. So that's the expectation, and you know that when you... Because some people might choose to not even go to court because it's so off-putting to have to go through that process, to not even get the outcome that, you know, justice should serve.
I mean, if you look at say, murder, for example, so, you know, we've always, when they go, oh, they've got life imprisonment, and we go, oh, life, oh, good, yes. And then it can mean 12 years or 15 years or 20 years for good behaviour. And I was looking it up, I think there's 74 now, so Wayne Couzens was given a life means life sentence. So they've actually said Sarah Everard's murder will never come out of prison. There's another, I think, 72 people, Rose West, Peter Sutcliffe, who's obviously now died. But there's only 72 that actually where life means life. And it's so weird that they can say in court it is a life sentence, but it actually doesn't mean life unless the judge specifies.
It's very difficult for families as well, because if it's a case where the victim is deceased, how does it make the family feel that their member of their family was less valuable than the next person who received a different sentence? It seems just very inconsistent and quite a grey area.
I think greyness is exactly where we're at. I mean, I know there are lots of online petitions calling for acid attacks to be classed as attempted murder, which seems very obvious to me, but offenders caught in possession of sulphuric acid face a 2-year prison sentence and an unlimited fine if in breach. But that in itself, that's a wishy-washy sentence. That means really very little.
Yeah, and I think now, you know, it's not just my case. I meet people like this all the time because of the nature of the charity, and I have to say, for every single person I've met, that hasn't been the outcome for them. So even though that's printed, that often isn't what happens in a trial.
Something's got to be done.
Something's absolutely got to be done. And no better person than to make it happen than yourself, Katie, that's for sure.